Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings and welcome to our virtual Enlightenment Salon of December 4th, 2022. Now, we are having a few technical issues with getting our guest, Steele Archer, to come on the air. However, we are gathered here for what will be a fascinating conversation nonetheless while we wait for him to arrive. And we have our distinguished U.S. Transhumanist Party officers and members present, including our Director of Visual Arts, Art Ramon Garcia, our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer, our Director of Applied Innovation, David Shoemaker, our Director of Longevity Outreach, Ben Ballweg, our Director of Sentient Right Advocacy, Tom Ross, our Director of Community Resilience, Alexandria Black, our Technology Advisor and Foreign Ambassador in Spain, Dr. Jose Cordero, and our member, Alan Crowley, who is going to initiate today's discussion. As a bit of background, Alan Crowley has been soliciting interest for a transhumanist book club that would meet informally every month to discuss a book that is relevant to our movement and how we can best advance the future of humanity. And earlier today, Alan, along with Ben Ballweg and myself, met to discuss a fascinating book that was written in 1951 by Eric Hoffer called The True Believer. And this is a book that focuses on mass movements and the states of mind of people who are attracted to those mass movements, perhaps not the kinds of mass movements that we would want transhumanism to be, but the book has a lot of insights nonetheless that I think would be applicable to transhumanism and what we do want transhumanism to be as a movement. So I would invite Alan now to share his thoughts on Eric Hoffer's book, The True Believer.
Thank you, Gennady. That was an amazing introduction. I appreciate that. As always, your introductions are fantastic. The True Believer, well, before I get into The True Believer, let me just kind of throw a pitch in for book clubs. I know I saw Lewis and looks like Mike are in the chat today. I know Mike's got his own book club going, and almost an Oracle style or Delphi style, where you read a book, you write a little piece on it, send it to Mike, who's going to jumble it all up, send it back out anonymously. So there are multiple efforts to provide some thought on appropriate reading or valuable reading for transhumanists and members and fans. And along those same lines, I was thinking of something a little less formal and just kind of more read a book and then once a month dial in or Zoom in was the way I'm using it to talk about that book and just discuss it and what's applicable about it for transhumanists and the transhumanist party in general. And with that regard, I came across last month we did Where's My Flying Car, which is very interesting analysis of the technology in the United States and kind of where we are moving forward with that. This month we picked The True Believer, which, as Gennady said, was written in 1951. I was perpetually amazed at how relevant it is to today's politics with the various camps of belief in our nation here in the U.S., probably around the globe. Hoffer talks about the mass movement strictly in terms of a believer movement, right? These are fanatics, kind of the way we generally use the term today, fanatics, people that strongly hold their ideology in hand as they move forward through life. And certainly the Democrats and the Republicans are examples of that, as are Christians and Muslims and most religious groups, hence the name of True Believer. I thought this would be a great book about, hey, well, how do we enhance our own little transhumanist movement and work on recruiting for those type of things? What I realized is that the people that make good true believers are absolutely not the people we want in the transhumanist movement. We don't want faithful, we don't want hero worship of Gennady, although he's a great guy. I mean, it's not like a cult of personality or let's follow the leader kind of people. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for independent thinkers and people who give good thought and reason to the topics of the world at hand, and who are against death, people who are for longevity and to some extent pro technology and pro transparency and government. So saying all that, he does an amazing job. Hoffer does an amazing job of really discussing the mass movements of socialism and Nazism, which had just kind of both, one had ended pretty much. Nazism had ended by 1951, and communism was really getting into full swing then. So he does a good job of relating how things like that work, and it's. If you look at these, various cults of personality, whether they're political candidates or Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Bill Gates, probably all have their cults of personality, people that just believe in what they do and buy Microsoft or buy a Tesla or whatever just because the leader of that movement says it, right? And they fall in line with that. Anyway, so recruiting those people I found to be less important about what we want to recruit as a movement. But one of the things that he really talks about is when people are frustrated, they want avenues, they want to take action. That's typically what people get frustrated about. Want to take an action, it gets stopped somehow, and that's what frustrates us all, right? So in his case, I think the real takeaway from that is, as a party, we can really strive with our projects and medical people that are doing longevity, like Aubrey de Grey, our political parties, giving folks access, whether that's through ranked choice voting for a more rational access about who's a candidate that best represents the people, or through technology like stem cell research, et cetera, access to those things that we agree make for a better life. That's health, wealth, and shelter. I don't know. Anyway, the kind of general common stuff that most folks agree on. Anyway, it was a great book, great discussion, and I recommend it if you're interested in more encountering what these true believer types, and if you're interested in just recruiting in general, it's not a bad book. I'll turn that over to the floor. I just want to thank you and Gennady for giving me an opportunity to talk about that. There's my little book report. But also, it's just great to read a book and talk with other transhumanists about it. So I would invite everyone to join in and do that some way or another. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you very much, Alan. And I will note that I have posted the link here to the free PDF download of The True Believer. So you do not have to seek out the book on Amazon, just download the file. It is a fairly quick read, and we would be interested in your insights. Or if you have read the book already, please share any thoughts you might have in the chat. Now I would like to turn the discussion over to Ben Ballweg, since he was a part of the book club. So Ben, what insights did you derive from The True Believer?
I think I was worried that some of what the book was sharing that outsiders could look at transhumanism and be like, oh yeah, they're a bunch of that fits them really well to a T kind of thing. But I was really happy early on to read in the book that it was like that the true believers that Hoffer was defining were defined by like their hate, which I don't feel is part of the transhumanism that I know, at least. There was a lot of it about being willing to die for their cause. I'm like, I don't think there's any transhumanists that are really about dying or anything like that. I really did like, there was a quote from Sarpedon in this book that I thought was kind of funny, in light of transhumanism these days. It was along the lines of that he wouldn't be fighting this war that he was in if he knew that, here we go. Oh, my friend, if we, leaving this war, could escape from age and death, I should not be here fighting in the van. I thought it was like, well, yeah, we clearly are not of that specific way that Hoffer is defining a true believer, because we want to live. We are hesitant to give up everything for this. This is, I don't want to quite call it a selfish movement. It's not selfless, though. We all do want what this movement can provide us. And at the same time thinking that it is best for humanity to pursue these motives in this way. As Alan was finishing talking, I really hoped that we could get a good amount of audience feedback in the chat today. And I'm not good about reading the chat at the same time, because I don't think my bandwidth is real good for handling both how we share on screen and watching the YouTube at the same time. But I really hope that people in the chat will share, like, what does make a good member of the transhumanist movement, and how do we best reach out and spread this message and refine this message to make sure it is most on point for most of humanity, and as it becomes transhumanity, that kind of thing. So maybe if I could leave my thoughts to that for now, and see what other people want to share about who is a good transhumanist believer and follower and member.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben, for those insights. And I will briefly point out some of our viewer feedback here. Daniel Tweed writes, I'm willing to live indefinitely for the cause. So we transhumanists, we don't want to die for our cause. We want to live for our cause. And Art Ramon points out that he will kill death for the cause. Yes, please do. We would welcome that. And also, we would like to welcome our guest of honor for today, our friend Steele Archer. So Steele is a presence in the transhumanist community who many of you will have known, because he was quite active in 2019 and 2020 via his shows Detonation and the Archer Report. And Steele essentially provided coverage of the 2019 U.S. Transhumanist Party presidential primary. He interviewed all of the candidates. He interviewed a lot of transhumanists within our community, as well as people adjacent to the community. These people offered a wide variety of perspectives on transhumanism, on emerging technologies, on the primary and how it was going. So his shows are an exceptionally good record of the events of that time period. And of course, I appeared numerous times on Detonation and the Archer Report, and I think Steele had a great forum for facilitating these exchanges of ideas. And now Steele is finally back. Steele only has an audio connection right now, but I would like to welcome you, Steele, and please say a word of greetings to our audience, and then I'll give you the floor.
Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. Hey, everybody, what's going on? Yeah, long time, 3 years. So I've been in contact with Gennady Stolярov over the whole period of time that I've been gone, and I'll tell everybody primarily the reason I did go so quickly and so fast was, there was a couple of shows at the end there, and I was complaining. I was saying, COVID hadn't killed us yet, but then what happened was Melbourne went into lockdown, and I mean it went into some serious lockdown. And the warehouse that I was renting, I mean, we got into a lockdown where it was a 5 kilometer radius, right? You couldn't leave your house, and you couldn't go outside of a 5 kilometer radius. So what happened was essentially I got locked down, and then I was stuck in my house, and then I couldn't be bothered. Like, I couldn't pay for rent at the studio and, sit around in my house because we were like locked down for a 5 kilometer radius. So it was like I couldn't afford to do both. And then, so 6 months later, like this COVID thing, Melbourne was still locked down really heavily because of COVID. And so, so it's just turning out to be terrible. So I just was like, all right, you know what? I just have to go get a degree. So I did wait for 6 months. I wanted to restart the show for 6 months. And it just didn't work. So what happened was I was like, you know what? I got to go get a degree. I went and got the degree. I did my postgrad cert. And as soon as I found out I finished it, I emailed Gennady. I'm like, hey, I'm done. I've got my degree. I've got my postgrad. I'm out of here. Let's go back into life extension, because I'm a natural life extensionist, or a life expansionist, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm naturally here. I'm naturally with you guys. But I thought, I'm just gonna focus on my degree, focus on my grad cert, so I can have that in my back pocket. Do that well, and I'll leave the community alone. And so I've been watching you guys. I've been watching the community for a long time now, for 3 years, seeing what you guys are up to, and it's very interesting because essentially what the community is really good at, as an observation factor, what the community is really good at is content creation. The community is very good at a sort of decentralized format of content creation, be that Lev Polyak or, Dick Transhumania. I've been watching some other creators now. There's a lot of other, some good people on YouTube Shorts who are making some really good YouTube Short stuff. I forgot his name. I'll find it for you. I was just repairing this phone so that I could have some audio connection here. So I've lost all my notes. But there's a guy on here. He's very good. I'll find him for you in a little bit when I'm on a break and I'm not chatting away. Very good YouTube shorts guy. These are the sort of content creators that we need, right? He's sort of the Isaac Arthur. Isaac Arthur actually. See, the thing about Isaac Arthur, hugely popular, massive amounts of content, really informative. Gets the viewpoints. Not just of transhumanism, of life extension and all that, done in a really beautiful format, beautiful context, beautiful research and stuff like that. But Isaac Arthur has a way to keep the user engaged over long periods. But over the last 3 years, especially with the invention of YouTube Shorts, with TikTok, with new innovations in the media space, and we've seen the shortening of media. So there are these new innovators, there are these new people in these new marketplaces. So I found that the transhumanist media, for the media's sake, is shortening. We're getting new innovators, but it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. I don't think transhumanists themselves have any sort of reduced attention spans. So I just think that the format's changing. So I've been watching these innovations, and I think, there still is a gap in the market for what I was trying to do, essentially, which is essentially a Bloomberg. And this is interesting, right? So what I always wanted Detonation to be is not what we're doing here, which is not what you're doing here is absolutely essential. It's a transhumanist forum. an enlightenment salon session, a community networking group, all of that. I love this. And the thing is, the beauty of Gennady and the beauty of the Transhumanist Party, and this is what I've been trying to tell people back on the Detonation show, is that it provides the party itself and Gennady and stuff. They provide a sense of stability for the transhumanists to bounce around. I'm a perfect example of that. I could leave for 3 years, go and do a degree, come straight back in, and and integrate back into the community and the network straight away, and because there's a stable center, and the political center is a stable center, which is funny because a lot of people say, oh, politics isn't stable, blah blah blah. No, that it goes. That's wrong, because that's why the Transhumanist Party was set up by Zoltan Itzvan as one of the primary functions, because actually the messiness of politics, the messiness of the Transhumanist Party, the messiness of the Republican Party, of the Democratic Party, of these political parties, actually is at its core stability, because politics provides the massive amount of flexibility in order to be stable, right? That's a weird thing. But so that's why I knew, I can go out, I can go do this stuff, and I can come back, swing back. And that's what the USTP does. That's what Gennady Stolyarov's chairmanship. It doesn't have to be Gennady, but Gennady's been there for so long that he provides an absolute center, of stability, which is really, really good. But in terms of what I vision, so we do have these creators, we have these innovators, we have these creators, we have these new people coming online. We have a slight tweak in transhumanist media, which is the content creators. But for what I was going to do with Detonation and what I envisioned hasn't been fulfilled. I haven't seen anyone do it. I haven't seen anyone attempt it. And basically, that's a competitor to, if anybody's seen it, Bloomberg Live, right? Bloomberg Media, Bloomberg News. And what is Bloomberg News? Well, Bloomberg News is different to Fox News. It's different to CNN. It's different to your local news station. In that Bloomberg Live is an intersection of finance, politics, and technology news, right? So I think that because it provides this unique hybrid, this absolute unique hybrid between finance, politics, and technology. And I think that's actually what this movement needs. It still needs that, and because it can interlink with all the other secular stuff on the periphery of all three of those subjects. But at the same time, that now that crypto, decentralized network, decentralized finance, all of that stuff is online, it is usable, it's open, the internet and decentralized finance has opened up that landscape. It's actually usable. We can actually play with it. We can actually incorporate data for the Transhumanist Party, for the different transhumanist movements around the world, and formalize it and use that data to project onto the playing field the sort of format that the Transhumanist Party and the transhumanists all over really need. You see, so that's kind of what I've been seeing. I've been seeing that no one's really taken this up. Nobody's really attacked this. I guess I'll have to do it again. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think I should come back? Here's the thing. Do you think I should come back? Do you guys want help on this? Do you guys want to see action in this area? Because I've been watching for 3 years. I haven't seen anybody do this. I haven't seen anybody really attempt it. But what I have seen is, like I was saying, I have seen the content creation side, and I think that needs to be enhanced. I think that needs to be massively enhanced. And the way to maybe do that is to, we could get some sort of creation, content creation hub, for example, but that's really it. But a lot of like the content, but that doesn't mean investing in infrastructure, because essentially a lot of the creators are doing their own decentralized work anyway. So like that just means YouTube or Twitter or wherever these people are going. Kate Lovechuck or whatever, she's always been doing her own thing, or Gennady has always been doing his own thing on the Rational Argumentator, or people have always been using YouTube in order to upload their own mini documentaries or whatever, right? So, within this decentralized content creation thing, people use decentralized outsourced platforms anyway. Yeah, so that's good, right? So anyway, so what do you guys think? Do you guys want me to come back? Do you guys need me? I still think there's a huge gap in the market here for decentralized for news, for transhumanist news, for the transhumanist community to get way more professional than it is, and get on a level footing. And I think the thing is, I was very close to doing it last time. That's the interesting thing. I was very, very close to doing it last time, except we got locked down. And so I was basically forced to leave. I did try to come back for about 6 months, and then I was forced to leave. So I got my degree, and now I'm here. Now I'm chatting to you and rambling on about transhumanist content, as always, because there is nothing else out there. I'm telling you guys, I went out, I read books, I searched. There's nothing else out there, everybody. You always just end up naturally here. If you're not here, there's nothing else to do. I'm telling you. But sorry, I've been talking way too long. But yeah, what do you guys think?
All right. Thank you very much, Steele, and welcome back from me personally. I would like to say that you were a key presence within our transhumanist community, especially during the years of 2019 and 2020, and we would be delighted to have you back. Our friend Luis Arroyo writes, we need transhumanist media of all kinds. And our friend John H. writes, hey, the more the merrier. In our internal chat, Alexandria Black writes that she essentially came to this session for you, and she says, yes, Steele, you should come back. Welcome back. Perhaps we should let Alexandria say a few words.
Oh, we missed you. We really missed you. And I got off my duff and came back for you. I've not done one podcast all year, but I'm going to try to do it more.
Excellent. Excellent. And for all of our YouTube viewers in the chat, please indicate via your comments if you would like Steele to come back. Art Ramon has a suggestion of doing a weekly transhumanist news broadcast, and surely, Steele, that would be within your skill set, considering that you were doing essentially daily interviews during the heyday of Detonation and the Archer report, and you were always able to locate some fascinating guests in order to essentially conduct that frequency of broadcasting. Jose Cordero writes, great to see you, friends. Best of luck to Steele. He has to leave now, but he wishes us all a great week. So thank you to Jose. And our friend Mike Lazine says that he definitely wants Steele to come back. So thank you, Mike, for that. I would also like to highlight a few other comments that were made during the chat. So Mike also states that two-party politics is solidly toxic. I agree, and that's why we need an alternative via the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Luis Arroyo notes that we have a solid community, and I agree with that observation as well. And part of the reason why we have a solid community is that we have a big tent where we don't have a single doctrinaire ideology that we require people to subscribe to. We facilitate a great deal of open discussion and debate, but within a framework of civility and tolerance and inclusivity. Now, John H. states that I am the stability of the movement, no pressure, smiley face. And Mike Lazine writes that he agrees. He would never want to see me step down or leave. He writes of me, he is great, and that is not hero worship. Well, thank you, Mike. I greatly appreciate that compliment. It's an honor to receive it from you. Alan Crowley writes, the core of the Transhumanist Party, changes aren't permanent, but change is. So that is an interesting insight, and certainly we've been living through a period of dramatic changes. I have been chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party for more than 6 years now. And during that time period, there have been colossal changes in terms of world events and colossal changes as well in terms of how the Transhumanist Party functions, what our capabilities are, what our routines are. And I think this is important and it's relevant to the situation with Steele. So Steele was essentially our media outlet during 2019 and early 2020, because his show was the place to go for transhumanists to be interviewed and also for transhumanists to connect with people outside of the movement. And since Steele's hiatus, since he had to devote time to his university studies, we needed to find another way to create this kind of hub. And the virtual enlightenment salons emerged in part out of that. They started in May of 2020, so there was a kind of 2-month overlap with the last episodes of the Archer report. However, there is a need for these kinds of gathering places for people. And I know that the virtual enlightenment salons have a bit of a different format. It's a bit of a longer format, though only about twice as long compared to Steele's interviews, and we generally bring more people into the same session. However, I would say the frequency of discussions and the quality of the discussions were very much inspired by trying to perpetuate this kind of community that I think Steele's shows really contributed to. So there is a demand for this kind of interaction within our community, and something will try to fill any vacuum that forms. But also, we need to have a variety of media, and this is what Steele was highlighting. So the virtual enlightenment salons are very long form, and they are for people who really want to delve into depth, people who often have extensive ties to the transhumanist community and want to explore various angles, various nuances. On the other hand, the shorts that Steele was describing are for getting new people into the movement, getting them introduced to key ideas very quickly, especially because, unfortunately, many people these days have a short attention span. But what Steele's shows were doing was they were providing some options in the middle between those two very different formats, a kind of intermediate length discussion that also serves a valuable purpose in getting people interested in the movement, getting them to go into a bit more depth, and getting them introduced to some fascinating guests. So, Steele, I'll turn it over to you. Do you agree with that kind of characterization of the media landscape?
Yeah, absolutely, Gennady, and thank you for doing the virtual enlightenment salon for so long now. So this is the thing, like, Lev Polyak, the Break the Rules kids over there, and a bunch of others. See, the thing is this is what I would call, this is what I was referring to before as content creation, right? And I think it's beautiful. It's decentralized. It's beautiful. You have all your own unique formats. So the Enlightenment Salon is very long. It's for transhumanists. It's for rusted on USTP people and interested people can get more in depth and stuff. And I think that's beautiful. It's a great rallying point, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not very consumable for the mass media, for the masses. Okay, especially as we go into TikTok land, where those attention spans are collapsing down to whatever 0.5 of a second, or whatever people, it's pretty bad, but 7 seconds or whatever, right? But So the Enlightenment Salon and all that is great as content creation, great. Lev Piolia, break the rules, great. And there's a whole host of other content entities, including fixed, what I would call fixed content, kind of like Isaac Arthur. And I was just searching on the computer for this guy. I can't find him, but he's great too. He's an actual independent guy. He probably doesn't know who you guys are. See, that's the other thing. There's a lot of these new sort of Elon Musk type transhumanists. This is the other point. This is the other side, who have no idea who the United States Transhumanist Party is, who have no idea who transhumanist people are, that we all would know. But they're the Elon Musk type, electric cars, Neuralink. They know all down the line on the mainstream sort of transhumanist stuff, but they've never crossed over that filter, or the great filter, into the transhumanist world, because they're balancing on the edge of living in Dogecoin world and Tesla and Neuralink world, but not actually. They've never seen Zoltan Itzvan. They've never heard of Zoltan Itzvan. They don't know who that guy is. They've never crossed over the Rubicon, so to speak, right? So the point is what we have to do is, if they marry that, we just have to marry it. That's what we were trying to do last time. We could do it again. And you just have to say, hey, Elon Musk's fans, there's a whole bunch of people over here that are literally your people, you know, and I think that's how that and you know, the Bloomberg Live people too, not so much Fox, not so much CNN and all that, but the Bloomberg Live people in many ways are also naturally right here. The green tech people, the high tech people, the finance people, and you know, and especially because of COVID, there's a lot of this new energy around health. You know, people realized from COVID that health is a scarce resource, that health can really, you know, we were talking about, and Ukraine as well woke a lot of people up. I mean, we were talking about how, I do geopolitics, right? So I was talking about how Russia would invade Ukraine over and over and over again on the show. No one would, you know, really acknowledge that, except for a few people. But, you know, then suddenly it's a news item, and then suddenly everyone expert and stuff like that. COVID's the same thing. We were talking about how not only COVID will be something that's on the agenda, but there's going to be so many more. And simultaneously, if life extension takes off, we could have so many less, you know, existential threats, right? So so there's a whole bunch of what we could call TV viewing public who just haven't crossed the Rubicon into the transhumanist landscape, and it's about marrying them up. So we've got all this decentralized content over there that's being created by these Elon Musk type normie transhumanists who haven't crossed the Rubicon, and then you've got USTP people and all that. And there's a mismessaging going on, because they're just not talking to each other. For the mainstream people, because they don't know you exist, and for you, because you don't, for you guys, for the transhumanists, because you don't have a proper outreach, or you don't have any sort of subtle outreach, right? And I think this is just a mismatch to mismessaging. You know, Zoltan has tried to do it. He went around a bus in a coffin in the United States, right? He tried to launch the USTP. He wrote Transhumanist Wager, so he tried to do philosophically. I mean, he's attacked on multiple fronts. I'm seeing other people do. Isaac Arthur, you know, is probably one of the most prolific. And Alex over there at Transhumania, I think Alex from Transhumania has educated more normie type Elon Musk transhumanists than anybody, including Isaac Arthur in many ways, because his content is so good that you only have to watch it once. With Isaac Arthur, it's very interesting, but so you can talk about the moon colonization or life extension or this thing or that thing, and you could watch an Isaac Arthur piece of content, but then you could go away still being a normie, because there's not a call to action, so to speak. It's just an information output. So Isaac is playing both sides, not because Isaac is playing any particular side, but that's just the way it's been formatted, right? So that's kind of the point, right? Is that that there's just a mismatch, a miscommunication going on between the new tidal waves of mainstream sort of transhumanists and the rusted-on core transhumanists that are looking towards the singularities. I use the plural, right? But looking towards the singularity, looking towards the trying to boost their numbers within the various groups and corporations and social groups and whatever, Radfest and BioViva and whatever. So we're trying to match skills and we're trying to match the social elements and all that stuff, right? So it's kind of like there's just all I see is just a simple communication error between what you guys are trying to do and what the mainstream growing masses of people are doing, and it's just a simple communication error. And again, I think that that if we could build a Bloomberg Live type thing where suddenly the leaders of the US, like the political parties, because when I first got involved with this, I believe in 2014 or 2013, that video of the Russia the Russia 2045 video, right? I believed that video. I'm an idiot. Right? I shouldn't have believed the video. But the video was like saying, there would be a proliferation of transhumanist political parties around the world that would take us up to 2045. And the reason I loved that so much, that we needed the proliferation of political parties around the world, is because once you have political parties in different countries, you have a sort of oscillator, not only on the countries themselves, and their opinions towards transhumanism, but also they keep a check on the technology growth and the technology rate and the different debates and concerns culturally, etc., within the countries themselves, you see? So the Russian transhumanist political party would be saying, well, we have problems. Yes, we have problems with technology, and we have problems with XYZ company, and we have problems with Putin, and we have problems with Zelensky in the war. And then the United States want to say, well, we don't have any actual problems with those guys. We're just trying to stay out of that. We have problems with lots of companies, or we have problems with media. And then the Barbados transhumanist party would say, well, we don't have that problem at all. We actually have, climate change issues problems, and that's why a lot of people are coming out. So that's why I believe so much that the growth and the expansion of the political elements, the growth of political transhumanism across the world would be so important, because you'd have these massive oscillators where you could see the stresses and strains and problems and issues that would face transhumanists all around the world all the time, you see. So the interesting thing about Bloomberg News, if you look at Bloomberg News, this intersection of finance, business, data, politics, whatever, is that it's all data-driven. It's all data-driven. And see, the thing about the transhumanist movement is the transhumanist movement hasn't been data-driven. The USTP is different again, but that's the way you do it. You get on the data-driven side. So we have to create data-driven entry points for the political things, therefore generating the drama, inserting yourself into the drama. And I think, with Elon Musk, there's so many opportunities every day to expand this movement, because the guy is so crazy, he says so many crazy things, he does so many crazy things, he's so cool, he's so awesome, but at the same time, he generates so much chaos that there's just so much room to just reach in there and just pick, disinfected voters, essentially, right? Voters or new members or just, and just grow the movement. But it doesn't have to be, this is a very important thing, it doesn't have to be just American focused. I mean, this has to be a globally focused thing, whether we're talking about the United States, whether we're talking about China, whether we're talking about Russia, whether we're talking about Belarus, whether we're talking about the United Kingdom, whether we're talking about Nigeria or Barbados or wherever. This has to be a global thing. And I think the news media function, like we were trying to build before, is the sort of catalyst event, the data-driven catalyst event to pushing people publicly, push into sort of action. You see, I'm always been about action. I love philosophy. I love the Enlightenment Salon. I love decentralized content, and there has to be more of it. We have to promote more of it, and we have to promote quality too. Quality is the big one. That's the one I want to hit on next. Is quality. But here's the thing. So we have to. So I think that's very important. We have to hit on this. We have to promote growth. We have to take advantage of opportunities as we see it. But and we have to fix the messaging. We have to fix messaging, and then we also have to the news element can help to promote the commercial element on this side as well. And that's the other thing. So we're talking about Liz Parrish, or we're talking about Orby Duguay, or we're talking about David Sinclair, or we're talking about a whole bunch of others, and there's tons and tons and tons of people, right? It's so amazing. But the news element has to be able to interface with the commercial element as well, which the political element really just can't do. And I've watched it for years now. It's just not a very healthy relationship, especially as the political elements are usually arguing that, money should be kept somewhat out of politics, right? So, you don't want this healthy relationship of expanding political, transhumanist political parties and corporate growth on the side. It doesn't matter if that corporate growth is Alcor or cryonics facilities or whatever. It's not a very healthy relationship. What you want is people feeling like they're in control of their own transhumanist political parties, okay? You have to have people-powered movements essentially at the political core. The news framework is information and data-powered, and in somewhat, public image, manifestation, and then leave the corporate side to do what the corporate side does best, which is do efficiency, which is it can do its own politics. It can interface with politics how it normally interfaces politics. And we know how they normally interface with politics. You can go around the world. There's tons of different political systems. Whether you're in the United States, you get the Republicans and the Democrats and how they do it, or if you're in the United Kingdom, or if you're in the European Union, or if you're here in Australia, or you have a very, very messy relationship with corporate politics, a near inconsequential relationship if you're in China, for example. Southeast Asia is different again, as David Sinclair would point out, and others. So we know all of that, right? But so you have to leave these functions to do their own functions, but they can be married through a central medium, which is what I'm talking about, which is that Bloomberg lifestyle thing. And the thing is, if I come back, if I do this stuff, and I come back, there's going to be no more detonation, no more Archer report. That's all out the window. That's dead, gone, bye-bye. But I would be doing something that would be branded and that would be focused on transhumanism, for transhumanism, and it would be there to correct the messaging. No more debt and buy. Like, I know it wasn't supposed to be like that, but it would be transhumanist, okay? It's got to be transhumanist, for transhumanists, by transhumanists, and it's got to have a purpose and a message, and it's got to have quality, and it's got to have goals. It's got to have set goals. I mean, I already know what all this stuff is, but what I'm saying is that once you have these sort of clear-cut guidelines and these goals and your expectations of what the company would be doing, or the movement, or whatever it is, the thing would be doing, then we can proceed down that. And everybody will know exactly what is going on. You see, it's not like this mixed, because I was looking, I didn't look at detonation too much. Like, I haven't looked at it very much. I don't think about it too much. I always think about the future. I'm a futurist. Okay, I don't dwell on the past, but I do look at it and I think, oh, it's a bit gross. Like, because it was an organic thing. Okay, it was it was supposed to be one thing, and it changed a little bit, and then it became its own thing. But it's gross. It's next time we have to do it, we have to have clear messaging, clear goals. It has to be very fixed, in what it's trying to accomplish. It can't be like coming going, detonation, transhumanism. That doesn't make sense. What is that going about? We want when we want people coming in, they go, oh, this is transhumanist media, or this is a transhumanist news network. Oh, I know what I'm in here for. And if they don't like it, they don't have to stay. Okay, they can leave. They can switch it off. They can exit the tab. They can turn off the TV. They can turn off the radio. Whatever. It's done. It's finished. And that's how media is nowadays. You have to either grab their attention and tell the viewer explicitly what it is they're looking at within a split second, or they will turn it off. Okay, because the media landscape is so goddamn competitive. Okay, it's so competitive. it's infinitely competitive, especially now with these new short formats. Twitter being one, obviously, but and I guess Twitter is interesting because we're also talking about stunts and stuff like that. That it's not like ABC News or Fox News or CNN. It's not like they don't pull their own stunts to grab some media time. Elon does it all the time, right? But anyway, so if I did come back, I just wanted to let you know that the messaging and the direction and the goals and all of that will be far more clear than Detonation or Archer Report or anything like that. So because we will be trying to build a central hub. So I've been emailing a lot of people over the long time, and I've been talking to transhumanists, for the whole 3 years, talking about this stuff. And this seems to be what it is. But if people agree, if they don't, tell me. I mean, email me, text me, write them in the comments here. Spread this stuff around. I mean, spread this chat right here. Spread it around to everyone you know and say, hey, what do you think about this guy? What do you think he's saying? Do you think he's good? Think he's bad? Do you think this idea sucks? Does it suck? Is what I saying suck? Do we need this? I think we need this. I've been watching this for 3 years. I haven't seen anyone do this. I don't know. What do you guys think? And also the other thing is when you just stop and you just go out into the sunshine and stuff. I mean, without the drama, life is damn boring. I am so bored, everybody. I'm telling you, I'm so bored. It's just like doing the degree is fine and stuff, but I like the drama. I like transhumanists fighting each other and scrapping away in ideological trenches. Okay, I love it. I live for the drama. I breathe through the drama. And when I'm not doing it, I am just so bored, right? So so I like for me, it's an entertainment machine, but hopefully for you people too. But I don't know. I don't know. Back to you, Gennady.
All right. Thank you, Steele, for sharing your thoughts. And I do have a few comments from our viewers to share as well. So our friend John H., whom I would also like to thank for his generous contribution today, writes that he didn't know Steele before this broadcast, but he sounds like he'd be an asset. So John says, I vote aye, bring him back. And Paused Video writes, yes, Steele was a great presence for all sides of transhumanism to present their ideas, encouraged discussions, and made the discussion the forefront of his show. I certainly agree with that observation. And Alan Crowley, whom I would also like to thank for his generous contribution, writes that he is with John H., and while Alan never saw Steele before, he speaks like he never left. So welcome back to Steele, and I really appreciate those words. And once again, Alan, thank you, and Alan thanks John for reminding him to put his money where his values are. And of course, Alan has been a crucial contributor to today's salon. And I think the two topics we were discussing are interrelated as well, because Eric Hoffer's book describes mass movements, but it also raises some questions as to what kind of movement do we want transhumanism to be. And clearly, in my view, we want it to be a constructive movement, a non-dogmatic movement that welcomes people of various perspectives and seeks to broaden the base of support for the movement. So we need new media, we need different kinds of media in order to make that happen. Now, before I turn this over to the panel, and I'm sure our panelists have many questions for Steele, I have one question to ask based on what Steele has said, and that is with regard to Elon Musk. So, Steele, you characterized there being essentially these pop transhumanists, for lack of a better term, people who are interested in the advancement of science and technology, and some of them are quite influential. They may have their own businesses, they may have a lot of fame, and yet they're not part of the official transhumanist movement. And to some extent, at least Elon Musk himself tries to distance himself from the transhumanist movement, especially with his dismissive and sometimes antagonistic attitude toward life extension. So he recently had a comment on Twitter saying it would be a curse to live forever. And then a few months prior to that, actually it was in December of 2021, he had an interview where he said essentially life extension would be a bad idea because it would keep around people with ossified points of view longer, and that would inhibit social progress. Of course, the response to that is if you reverse biological aging, that problem of a lack of neuroplasticity would go away. But it's clear that he has a disconnect between his own thinking and some of the more ambitious aspirations of the transhumanist movement. So, Steele, do you think it might be possible to bring him on board with the life extension concept, or do you think his opposition is too entrenched to that? And if we do try to bring him into the movement to a greater extent, that might risk actually undermining the life extension aspirations of the movement. What do you think about that, Steele?
Thanks for your comments, Gennady. And, you know, so on Elon Musk, it's an aphanity, right? He is a cosmoist aphanity, right? So that's what his aphanity is. It goes back to, you know, all those Soviet, you know, those Soviet cosmoists who were saying, you know, we have to go out into the stars and populate the stars in order to expand the human reach. And if we could expand the human reach enough beyond our solar system, then we could probably live on because we could harvest, you know, resources from suns way beyond, you know, or, you know, harvest the resources from black hole energy or white hole energy or something like that. It's a cosmoist attitude. And it's a silly attitude. Well, it's not silly. It's good. I love the cosmos sort of attitude, the fantasy sort of thing. But it's something that's far beyond your own capacity as one individual. He's expanded his philosophical and spiritual beliefs into that he is humanity. You know what I mean? And I mean, conceptually, spiritually, physical, psycho, spiritually, whatever. Maybe that's true. Maybe we do live in a universe where we are humanity, really. We are sort of the omega point all simultaneously. But the point is that there's not enough evidence to demonstrate that. I've been Steele my entire life. Gennady, I think you've been Gennady your entire life. Every single panelist here, Mr. Shoemaker, you could tell us, have you been Mr. Shoemaker forever and ever and ever? I think you have, right? We're all stuck in our own meat sacks. Like, you know what I mean? And as long as we're all stuck in our own meat sacks, and that's demonstrably true, we're not really living beyond ourselves because there's not enough evidence to say that I am Mr. Shoemaker or that I am Gennady. Although I might be Gennady and I might be Mr. Shoemaker, and that's all very interesting, but that's spiritual, and that's way beyond what evidence can provide. I'm Steele. I'm stuck being Steele. I can't be anybody but be Steele. Mr. Shoemaker is Mr. Shoemaker. Gennady is Gennady. Isaac Arthur is Isaac Arthur. Zoltan is Zoltan. You know, and we're not somehow all of these people all together. Now, we could be, but it's kind of a silly notion. And I think that once you get enough money and you get rich, because when you make wealth, massive amounts of wealth, and he knows a thing or two about making money. He's the richest person in the world, potentially the richest person ever. We can debate that. I'll debate that for a long. I'm the one who sat in front of the Federal Reserve. I'm not. We're not going down that road. But the point is when you make lots and lots of money, you get a big ego. And therefore, when your ego starts to speak, you can start to come up with these crazy ideas, and you probably think they're true because money enables you to think that your crazy ideas are true. Now, so he's got this sort of cosmoist attitude, So it's kind of hubris, I'd say. It's just hubris. It's kind of silly. It doesn't mean much. But the other thing is is he saying life? Because we've debunked, and so have you, and so has everybody on this panel, the life extensionist debates over and over and over and over and over again about why living longer is a good thing and it's not a bad thing, etc. And a lot of the long-term debates fall over about dictators and overpopulation and couple that with accelerating returns from expansionist technology on the accelerating curve and all that, and human flourishing and the psychological changes of aging and life appreciation, blah 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 blah. So and the fact that he doesn't know any of this, I highly doubt that he doesn't know any of this. I just think that either he's covering up for something, or he has some sort of hubris, or he's just on that cosmoist idea. And that cosmoist idea, although it's really good, it's dangerous in that he does do this flip-flopping against life extension. Yeah, that'd be my comment.
Very interesting thoughts. Thank you, Steele. And I think you were quite insightful there. A few bits of audience feedback. Luis Arroyo points out that the cosmists were the original transhumanists. Indeed, the Russian cosmists were precursors to transhumanism, and via the ideas of people like Nikolai Fyodorov and Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, they advocated both space exploration and radical life extension, including revival of people who had previously died. So I would say, based on the cosmist thinking, what Elon is focusing on, which would be space exploration and other technological transformations, say the transformation to electric vehicles or solar energy or changing the infrastructure of transportation, all of that is quite compatible and complementary to life extension. John H. points out that Elon has been a huge disappointment to him, and Mike Lazine agrees with that assessment. And Jason Geringer has an interesting observation. He writes, the top person like that gets surrounded by only yes men, and no one tells him no anymore, so perhaps he does not have people in his inner circle who are challenging his ideas. And indeed, it seems to me Elon often spouts off on the first thought that occurs to him on a subject, and I've heard him utter similarly uninformed statements with regard to AI risk, where he seems to embrace more of the Terminator scenario rather than a more nuanced view of the future of AI. And it seems that he does tend to gravitate to some of these more sensationalist viewpoints, and he might not have people within his circle who would challenge that and who would suggest that he look further and perhaps interact with some transhumanists who are within the movement. And Leo B says, yes, men, as an engineer, I always default to no. So, but it's interesting, Elon is an engineer too, by his training. So why doesn't he have a kind of bit more of a skeptical turn of mind toward the sensationalist portrayals of AI or longevity that we sometimes encounter in the media. So those are interesting thoughts. But now I would like to turn the discussion over to the other panelists, because I'm sure there are plenty of questions or thoughts that you would have to offer to Steele. So who would like to go first? Tom?
Yeah, I can jump in. First of all, yeah, I'm glad Steele's back, and I do want him to continue to do this. And I think timing is everything, for one thing. And you have the discipline necessary to do this. You do shows over and over, and that takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of ability to do that. And so that's what we would need. We would need somebody who can continue to do this, to fine tune the message. But again, timing is everything. And I don't think the last 3 years have been wasted. We kind of go in a cycle, and even Elon Musk is kind of on that cycle. It's almost that narcissistic cycle of love bombing and then devaluing and abandonment. He's kind of in somewhere between the devaluing and abandonment stage of this cycle. And we've learned a lot in the last 3 years through the presidential primary we did. And so I think if we were to continue to if we did this 3 years ago, we might be on that same cycle. But again, timing is everything. And I think it's a perfect time to really focus in on doing a very professional attempt to own our narrative. You know, I've been saying for years as an officer here that we need to get on the shows that see transhumanism as this nefarious agenda, you know, and really talk these people through that thing. You know, a lot of people have these conspiracies, and you can't really get them out of that loop because their bottom line depends on this type of thing. But so I think it's really important right now to take this seriously, to have this Bloomberg Live type news channel that you're discussing. I think it's a very important time to do this, and I think we've learned enough to where we can really have our message fine-tuned and to push it forward. And because the other cycle is that we're on is we're offering door number 3. Really, we've had the dichotomy of the two parties and all of this stuff going on, and with QAnon now kind of having its day. Now people are going to want a third option. They're going to want something that's more rational, something that's requires critical thinking and discipline. I'm ready to do this myself. I'd love to get involved with this because I've got certain things in my own life that have aligned to where now I can really focus on this type of thing more. And so I hope to get involved with that too. But yeah, I think it's really great that you're around, and I don't feel like the last 3 years were lost. I know you haven't wasted them with getting your degree and all that in line, and but I think if we were to do this sooner than now, we might be in that cycle, the downturn of that cycle. So again, I think timing is everything. I think this is divine timing, if you will, in a way, and so it's really a good time, I think, to really focus in on this and get something really professionally created. And I want to help with that.
Excellent. Thank you very
I'd
much,
like to
Tom.
help too.
Yes.
You know,
and Jason,
think
would you
we're
like to say
totally
anything else?
Yeah, I think we're totally ready. I think, the Enlightenment line is great. And I love the strict format because then it keeps us all, we all know we're going to be civil here. You know what I'm saying? But it would be fun to talk about some of the more really controversial issues. You know, the legislative analyst team does have some channels where we talk about all kinds of this stuff. But we keep it rather civil. But there's a lot of the stuff we could probably talk about that is really cool that's going on. There's so much stuff is happening in the world right now that we are actually in a unique position, to have insights into geopolitics because we can see, these confluence of these different technologies and what that's going to happen into the future. And with the war in Ukraine, everything's different now, so I'd love to talk about all that stuff. There's, so yes, let's do it. Back to you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jason. And a few comments from our chat are fitting here. So Walter Crompton, in response to a variety of facets of today's discussion, writes, the transhumanist movement is largely nonpartisan, rather like a war against cancer. It is unstoppable. Support is a matter of degree, and nobody needs to fire a single shot. So I certainly agree with that sentiment. Let us gather that kind of support. However, Walter also writes, at the same time, the Transhumanist Party is partisan by definition and might someday be driven to arms. What I have to say about that is not while I am the chairman. That will not happen under my watch.
No. There's no reason to ever go to political violence.
Exactly.
That's
Mechanical arms, maybe. Yeah.
Mechanical arms. Yes. I have actually suggested in a short story that I wrote a long time ago, I believe the title is The Fate of War, that in the future, human civilization will recognize the folly of people killing people and instead will replace warfare with stylized robotic combat. So to resolve a geopolitical dispute, the various combatant powers will agree, instead of sending people to fight, they will just send their robots to fight other robots, hopefully over terrain that doesn't have any productive assets, so that lives will not be lost, property will not be lost, and the fate of the conflict will be decided based on this combat among the robots.
That was a Star Trek episode. That was an old Star Trek episode where the whole war was all a simulation. And then if the one side lost, they all had to I think they all had to kill themselves or something like that.
Yes.
Go into a booth. Integrated. Yeah.
They were simulating a nuclear war. And of course, in my preferred future, there would not be any sort of human casualties arising either directly or by way of agreement. Instead, suppose the war is over territory X. Whoever wins the robotic combat just hands over territory X, just receives territory X from whoever loses the robotic combat.
Well, as director of sentient rights advocacy, I'm going to have an issue with that. We're going to need to discuss these robots and sending them to war.
Right.
Well, on the plus side, everybody will know about it. You know, with this latest thing in Ukraine is shown us, it's all on stage. I mean, there's you can just look at the satellite imagery from commercial companies. You know, it's completely open source. The open source OSI or whatever they call it, open source, intelligence that you can pull just right off the internet, in your mom's basement. It's crazy compared to before. Whole new world. Everything's on stage now.
Yes, indeed. And I would point out that the robots who would be doing the fighting would not be sentient. I would take issue with engineering any sort of sentience or general intelligence into those robots. That would be problematic, to be sure. But if they are just machines, if they're narrow AI, like the battle bots of today, except the great powers all agree that this is how conflicts will be resolved from here on out, I think that would be a much better world. But in any event, I would also like to highlight another comment from Walter Crompton, who writes, backward Saudi royalty are greater supporters of transhumanist progress than so-called liberal leaders of Europe, North America, Japan, etc. And he thinks transhumanism does not equate to humanitarian principles that are expressed by the USTP. So he thinks that transhumanism as a phenomenon is broader than the official transhumanist movement. I don't think the Saudi royalty is going to ever acknowledge its affinity for transhumanism or say that transhumanism is in accord with their worldview, because their worldview is fundamentalist Islam. And yet they are harnessing some strains of transhumanism without adopting the philosophy. And the question for all of us to think about is, how concerning is that, or is it concerning if there are good consequences that stem from it, and actually there might be an effect of liberalizing that regime if it gets sufficiently involved in these kinds of pursuits. Also, Alan Crowley writes, the time is ripe for giving people an opportunity to change society. And I certainly agree with that. Mike Lazine points out on the Saudi regime that it should be alarming that they made Sophia the robot the first AI/android to have citizenship. And yet it was a surprisingly open-minded and progressive gesture from that regime. Mike points out this was done in Saudi Arabia before it was done in the US or the EU or Asia, which still have not granted a robot citizenship. So very interesting to consider where transhumanism is likely to get a foothold, not just in terms of the ideas, but in terms of the practical feedback, the practical impact and feedback upon our reality. Paused Video writes, breaking the narrative of transhumanism being nefarious will only be done if the individuals and groups that want to use transhumanist ideas for personal power and gain are called out. I'm not sure, though, that there are that many groups that would actually be using transhumanist rhetoric for personal power these days, because transhumanist rhetoric isn't sufficiently mainstream yet to bamboozle people. So, as an example, with every rising social movement that attracts a lot of attention, there will be opportunists who cling on to it because they see some sort of advantage in virtue signaling, so to speak, or posturing as being of that ideology. Great example is Sam Bankman-Fried with effective altruism, where he stated in his private chats he really doesn't believe that. He believes in a kind of dog-eat-dog kind of world, but he espoused the ideas of effective altruism because they were fashionable. So I don't think transhumanism is at that stage of popularity yet where people would exploit it for that purpose. But Tom, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I would just suggest that Saudi Arabia may be one of these groups that have a nefarious intent or using, they're trying to become the tech center and like granting Sophia that citizenship, but you have to also look at how little citizenship their women in their culture have. So they're kind of cherry picking transhumanist ideas, and I would suggest that falls into what he was saying about how it's certain groups that use it for power, as opposed to a real authentic interest in what it has to offer.
Yes, indeed. And Alan says, it may be a citizenship one step below the second-class status for women, but it is a step in the right direction. And I would agree, it would have been worse if Saudi Arabia had not made that gesture, even though it is just a symbolic gesture at this stage. So now let us see if any of our other panelists have thoughts or questions for Steele. How about David? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, Steele, it's good to see you back, even if all I see is your face with a vibrating circle around it. That's also a step in the right direction. But great to hear you back on the air. And I want to acknowledge you for getting myself and others that I know on your program years ago and getting us to start talking on camera and doing things. And I think that you get credit for that, hopefully, if we've done some good since then. Your passion and focus hasn't diminished over those last 3 years, and I am really, really excited about that. I've actually got a couple of things here, but I'm interested in the 3 years off that you took for your degree. I'd like to know a little bit more about that degree. Why did you choose the degree that you did, and how do you plan to put it into use going forward? I think that might be an interesting insight.
Yes, indeed. I think, Steele, we would all be interested to hear that.
Hey, Mr. Shoemaker, good to see you too. And I forgot the lady's name, but make sure you say, Susan. Hey, say hi to Susan for me. I haven't talked to Susan in ages, if she's around and happy and healthy and all that. So make sure you say hi for her. Degree, okay. Well, I've always been obsessed with international relations since day dot, as far back as I can remember. And I actually did study international relations before I did the show. So IR has been a consistent food for me forever. I love anything to do with IR, be it war, politics, state-to-state relations, diplomatic affairs, anything IR related. I love it. I love it. I love it. I eat it for breakfast. I live it. I breathe it. So for me, the degree actually was quite simple, in that I just live it and breathe it anyway. So it was just more of a formality of going through the process and being able to do that. But how does it help? I don't know. Well, I like geopolitics. I think geopolitics is really important. It's also part of the reason that I like the USTP and the US Transhumanist Party and transhumanist politics, because I want to make it an international affair. I think different cultures are really interesting. I think the internet is a really powerful medium, and I think that being at the forefront of something so earth-shattering in terms of transhumanist politics, getting a bunch of Ukrainians, Belarusians, people from UK, people from Nigeria, people from South Africa, people from Brazil, getting them all arguing about transhumanism and the different cultural variants of transhumanism, to me sounds hilarious. It just sounds like a long-running joke. So for my own humor, that's what I would love to do. I'd love to wake up and see the head of the South African Transhumanist Party arguing with the head of the Mexican Transhumanist Party over international policy on AI. This would be a good world for me. This would be a good world for me. But I've always been interested in IR. I love IR. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, actually, I think that's quite amazing. And I see a parallel between that and transhumanism, going back to the big tent idea, if you will, because the tent gets even bigger when you go international than you do across, say, all 50 states and the territories of the United States. So whatever you can do to foster these different cultural approaches, perhaps, to transhumanism, and they don't have to argue, but there can be some lively discussions over things that are in common. But as you spoke about earlier, the focus for transhumanism in Mexico is going to be different than the focus for transhumanism in different countries in Africa or different countries in Asia, for example. And the way I look at this is that each one of those can develop that thread of transhumanism in their own country, and, to use an analogy, then pull them together in the strands of a rope that's very, very strong and very, very useful on the international scale. So I'm pleased how you spent your 3 years, and I think that it may be more useful to you in transhumanism than you may have thought about.
Thank you very much. And the other thing is, you're from New Zealand, right?
Well, Susan's from New Zealand. I'm from Oregon. So the climate's similar.
All right.
And I know Susan's listening, so it was good for you to call her out on that. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
So Susan will understand me. Susan will understand me because I'm an Australian and she's from New Zealand, and we're stuck down here on the bottom of an island, disconnected from the whole world. Like, we have nothing to do with the whole world. So international relations is our way of reaching out to the world. Susan will know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, we're stuck on an island down here in the middle of Nowheresville.
You can't see it, but Susan's up on the screen now. Gennady put her up there on a comment that she made. So yeah, next time we go to New Zealand, I hope to be able to jump the ditch and come over and see you.
Yes, indeed. And for Steele, if you can't see her comment, she writes, "Hi, Steele, you might not be able to see this. Thank you. I'm happy and healthy. As David said, you introduced me to talking on camera." So thank you, Susan, for sharing those words. A few more bits of audience feedback. Paused Video writes, "Using transhumanism for power wouldn't be the whole idea of transhumanism, but the cherry picking as suggested by the panel." So Paused Video thinks there could be entities that in the future might cherry pick from transhumanist ideas to find whatever it is that advances their power, but they wouldn't really be sincere transhumanists. This does tend to happen with any movement that gathers sufficient public support and enthusiasm, because somebody will want to ride the waves of that enthusiasm without really earnestly adhering to the ideas. So, to use Eric Hoffer's terminology, that person would not be a true believer. That person would be a cynical opportunist. And those people, they might be less fanatical than true believers, but they bring certain dangers of their own. I'm curious, Alan, if you have any thoughts on this.
Sure. I'll jump in there and say, I was going to say, cherry picking is one of the oldest, if not right before politics, one of the oldest professions. I agree. I think what Hoffer says in his book is that like mass movements are designed around this, imagine Hitler shouting out the idea, this is what's going to happen. And how people that are ready to follow a leader, so to speak, it really doesn't matter too much what the leader is about, right? It can be communism, it can be socialism, it can be transhumanism, as long as they put in the thing that tells them you're going to be much better off as a part of a subordinate part of this group than you are experiencing as an individual, where you're frustrated in your daily life, etc. I think that's sort of the beauty and complication of being in a group of individuals, right? I mean, no, I don't think there's any two transhumanists exactly alike, and I think that's a fantastic thing. I'm always eager to meet new ones, and I'm perpetually amazed at how most media, at least in this country, kind of focuses on these group identities, right? Well, you say transhumanist, obviously you all think alike. And of course, that's not the case with any group, right?
Yes, absolutely. There is a great deal of heterogeneity of thought within the transhumanist movement. If we try to reduce it to a single creed or a single set of positions that everybody has to embrace no matter what, we wouldn't have the kind of vibrant movement that we have today. And I think one of the reasons why the USTP has held together and functioned as well as it has over the past 8 years, because I would include Zoltan's tenure as part of this approach, is that we have tried to be inclusive. We have never sought to be doctrinaire or sought to subsume people within the movement. We want people to retain their individualities and help the movement using their multifaceted talents. Paused Video writes, any way that encourages discussion is a positive. So if international relations is a way to promote conversation, then Paused Video is all for it. Thank you with regard to that comment. And Luis Arroyo points out that in terms of cynical opportunism, this is what happened with socialism and the progressives currently in government. So the progressives currently in government may have co-opted the ideals of socialism for their own purposes, according to Luis. Jason, yes, please go ahead. And you have a question for Steele too, so please ask it.
Oh yeah. What is unique to transhumanism, and I think that which is going to give it the stability to go the long haul as a movement, is the fact that it has a moral floor. It can serve that function that maybe religion might do, in that people are assumed to be at a basic level of being human. Starts with transhuman, it starts with the human part, so when it comes to how we act and whether or not we get all stupid with our arguments and just what one of the main things that brings you to transhumanism is you're sort of responsible for how you treat your friends and your other people around you. That's what's being a human. So mostly that is one main concepts that we all sort of kind of agree on. Don't be an a-hole, basically. And so then that makes it kind of hard for somebody to come in and just be all, and do, because people are like, you're an a-hole. But, my question. Are you still in Steele? If you're there, are you still in Australia? And do you like that song for Men at Work, Down Under? and also, I love geopolitics too. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether or not you think that we are in the future heading towards more globalization or less globalization.
Those are great questions.
Men at Work, yes. Living in Australia, yes. It's a prison colony. I can't leave. We can't leave. What are you talking about? There's a choice. You can go somewhere and go out in the world. Wow, that's cool. No, we're stuck here, man. It's eventually stuck here. On the third question, very interesting. So what I've been talking about, what we started to talk about on the show before I left was the 3 Ds. That's debt, depopulation, and deglobalization. And, we were early on this. A lot of people were still talking about, globalization, population, and whatever. But we were saying it was the 3 Ds over and over and over. I said the 3 Ds. It's deglobalization, it's depopulation, and de-dollarization, right? So that has been the theme. And then, COVID hit, and COVID just accelerated that massively. We had a new massive wave of depopulation. We had a massive wave of de-dollarization, and especially with Bitcoin and many other things, the yuan and the real and other things. And so no, I don't see. What I see now different competing forms of globalization. So you have the generic one world, New World Order type globalization, which was a unipolar American-led order. The United States was doing all the security lifting and promoting trade around the world. That is disappearing in rapid knots. And I'll give you a brief example of something that I've been focused on for a long time: the increasing amounts of piracy in the Indian Ocean. Okay, you guys probably would never have heard about it. Doesn't matter to you. Doesn't affect you. But in the Indian Ocean, there has been massively increasing amounts of piracy, where even state actors, be it India, be it Iran, be it anyone on the Horn of Africa, the massive naval race, be it from China and India and others, is because there's piracy. There's state-sponsored piracy. There's organic piracy. And the Europeans can't do anything about it. The Americans don't want to do anything about it. And remember, this is the trade route, for example, going down through the Malacca Strait, etc., where that fuels China. They get all their hydrocarbons from the Middle East, the fuel and all that rushes down there. If you can't get your hydrocarbons, then you end up with lower crop yields in China. And that's when you end up with the massive amounts of destabilization process that's going on inside of China right now. And, there was a lot of people saying China is the future, China is this, China is that. I've been saying the opposite for a long time now, that China is a bubble, that China is prone to this destabilization. If you cut off China's ability to interact with the world through the sea lanes, they're stuffed. The United States isn't stuffed. The United States can just trade internally with itself. Has the United States got a lot of problems? Yes. But can the United States just turn inward and trade with itself? Absolutely. Can China do that? No, it can't. And everywhere it faces hostile enemies. But does that mean that China's over? No. What's happening is you've gone from a unipolar, from anyone who existed in the 90s, you all understand the unipolar sort of fashion up until probably 9/11, and then everything changed. But now you have different competing forms of globalization. You have a Chinese civilization, you have a Russian civilization, you have a semi-European civilization, probably more of a French-Germanic thing, and then you have an Anglo thing as well, and then you have sort of minor kingdoms on the periphery, be that China or India or some African things, maybe Nigeria or South Africa, etc. You have these sort of minor kingdoms on the periphery that can all be jolted by policies from any of the great powers, right? These exist at the behest of the great powers. But what's interesting in the meantime is that these are different and competing forms of globalization. So we're having a new renaissance of globalization coming out of a unipolar globalization, and we have to see what happens on the other side of this. Now, how do we take care? How do we grab onto this as transhumanists and as USTP and Jewish Transhumanist Party? Well, this is the problem. We don't have the political parties set up and the infrastructure set up to know what these advocates would say. Okay, that's why we need to expand the political infrastructure, because if we knew, I could say, hey, just let's just cross over to the Indian Transhumanist Party leader, and he'll or she'll or whatever, that person will tell us what the form of globalization and what they see and what they feel and what they do. But we can't do that, so we have to sit around in the West or the East or wherever we are. You guys are in the West. I'm down here on an island prison colony. But you have to sit around in the West and speculate on what it might be, right? And we've always had to do this because despite the internet being a sort of monoculture, I also think that the end of the monoculture of the internet is happening. And that's happening because of what we used to talk about on the show, the bifurcation of the internet, the digital curtain has gone up. It's firmly entrenched. So you're getting a bifurcation of civilizations online as well. The Russians are doing their own thing on Russian media. The Americans are doing their own thing on American media, and they're starting to be herded into different corners now. Everyone used to be on Facebook. Now they're on Twitter and Truth Social and YouTube, and they're being cornered in different platforms. And some of them are trying to break out into more free speech platforms, whereas the Russians and the Slavic peoples have a much higher affinity to that. They're much more used to using encrypted apps and stuff, especially because of the conflict and all that. The Chinese are absolutely conformed to massive state totalitarian surveillance, but not just in the way where we are like, oh yeah, we got to be careful of the data we put on because we know that these Cambridge Analytica types are out there selling our data and stuff, therefore shaping and conforming our behavior, right? That's part of the surveillance technique, is to have to mass shape behavior, because they say if you don't behave, we're going to do a Cambridge Analytica on you, right? Okay, so we got that in the West, but India and China, etc., they have their own civilizations, digital civilizations now. And if you look at that interesting example from Tuvalu, right? Is it Tuvalu? Tuvalu, I think it's Tuvalu. You can correct me if you're wrong. Search it right now. There's this island that's quote unquote disappearing underneath the waves. They're being washed away. The whole nation is being washed away because of rising sea levels. And they're saying they have to become the world's first digital nation. They're going to put everything on the blockchain. They're going totally digital. They'll put all their customs, their history, their art, everything's going on the blockchain. And they're going to live as a digital nation online unless climate change is reversed. Now, I don't really care about the arguments of for or against, or if it's happening or what, but think about the concept of that. That's coming out of the World Economic Forum. Think about the concept of that. A nation, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. But these people are saying we have to preserve our culture and our history, etc. online. We have to go and to preserve it. We have to go online. We have to go on the blockchain, essentially, right? I mean, that is super interesting. So you're talking about these mega bifurcations in the digital wall, right? So China, USA splitting up and stuff like that. But then also on a micro scale, we're talking about nations that, in order to preserve themselves and their customs and their heritage and their language and their art and their media and their culture and their people, they have to go online and become an online digital nation. So that, in its sense, if you put every single country online, that's a massive bifurcation. That's a multipolar order, right? Online, and some countries will be bigger than others, and some cultures are bigger than others, and some are smaller, and some are more meaningful, and some are less meaningful, and whatever, right? I mean, it's all relative. I'm not meaning a bit about. I'm just saying, if you're American, you probably care more about American culture than someone from Tuvalu, all right? Or if you're a New Zealander, you probably care about more than someone you've never heard of from, I don't know, wherever. Pick a country, right? So it's all relative though, and it's all meaningful. But I'm just saying. So that's a very good question. I like that question a lot. I think there's different.
Back to it. What do you think the war? What do you think the war is doing to that same issue of globalization? Did it speed it up? Less? More?
War is always a deglobalizing factor. You have less people. You have greater. You have greater animosity between the different factions. You always usually have higher trade barriers, tariff barriers. You usually have, less cultural interchange. War, by definition, whether that be the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, whether that be in Syria, whether that be in Yemen, whether that be the potential conflict in Taiwan with China and the United States, war is always, by definition, a deglobalizing factor, okay? Because it's one country or one state or one faction that's trying to force a form of globalization onto another faction, either for its own expansionary purposes or for some other purposes.
Yes, indeed. And
excellent answer.
Yes, I agree. And it is troubling to me to what extent war has led various previously productive international ties to fray or dissolve altogether, to all of our detriments, because we are losing valuable goods, we are losing valuable services from other countries, our standards of living are declining, all essential goods have become considerably more expensive since the war in Ukraine started. And what is it all for? I think this war has brought nothing but destruction, death, and suffering to even the vast majority of us who are not on the front lines. And I would hope that peace and international goodwill can be restored as soon as possible. Now, I wanted to give Art Ramon the opportunity to ask Steele a question as well.
Yes, Steele, thanks for coming on the show. Just going on war. I mean, we've been discussing war, and one of the things war always brings is technological advancement. I mean, just like the Germans created a bunch of technology during World War II. I see right now a lot of technological advancement is going on in secret, and that is probably going to create a lot of super soldiers, just like it's been depicted in sci-fi. And I think that's what's going to bring transhumanism into the mainstream, is going to be super soldiers, like in the next decade. So I think we need to prepare to sort of against opposition who are going to try and depict transhumanism as negative, because it's going to start with a lot of super soldiers. So, but all technology comes from, a lot of the technology comes from the military, like the internet. So we need to prepare. You know, we're in World War III right now. We're going to have super soldiers that are going to bring transhumanism into the mainstream, and we need to prepare and sort of control the narrative so that the opposition doesn't turn transhumanism as something negative. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, quite an interesting question from Art Ramon. Steele, we would be interested in your thoughts.
We're the dudes in the chair, like Spider-Man's buddy. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And Art Ramon, I've seen you a lot. You always have very interesting debate points and comments and criticisms and things. I've seen you a lot over the course of these years, and thanks for your contribution to the Enlightenment Salon and the efforts that are going on here. Thank you too, Jace. Sorry, I forgot to say that. But in terms of the military-industrial complex, right? Yeah, super soldiers, all good, fun stuff. I love this and stuff. Well, the military-industrial complex is kind of a driver of it's a forced driver. So you have kind of two creation methods, right? You have a bunch of different creation methods in terms of technology, but the military is kind of a forced creation method in that it gets funding. They don't really know what they're building stuff for because they think it might be handy. They create stuff, and the stuff usually ends up being useless for whatever the military purpose is. Not always, but a lot of the times. And then what happens is it goes into a back burner, and then somebody comes along later and discovers, oh, they actually did this in the military. They built a hot air balloon in order to Napoleon devised a hot air balloon in order to scout things. We could actually use this technology, right? And on and on. But I mean, the other one is you have organic technological drivers, which is your entrepreneurs, which is your scientists, your citizen scientists, which is your accidents, your eureka moments, and all of that sort of stuff, right? But I get what you're saying in terms of the military-industrial complex is important because a lot of forced innovation does come careering out of there. It's just that a lot of it is just not suitable for the purpose, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of there's tons of technology. The amount of books on technology that's just sitting around rotting because they create these things and then they never use them, or they need it for a conflict, or they need it for a future war that never happens, and the technology rots. So the amount of waste is massive, right? So the thing that you're saying is kind of this directional thing where it's like, we need super soldiers. Probably what you're talking about are organic ones, probably not inorganic, right? Because obviously the inorganic is usually better. Whether you're talking about fighter jets, like the inorganic fight, you don't really want pilots in your planes. They're pretty ineffective. You're much better off just making them autonomous. You don't really want men and women and soldiers inside your tanks. It's pretty ineffective. You want all this to be autonomous. You don't really want soldiers on the battlefield, because then you just deplete your human capital. You kind of want drones. You kind of want automatons. You kind of want mindless creatures, right? Because then you can reuse the human capital to do much more complex tasks. And usually in terms of more complex tasks, we're talking about civilian, military to civilian interfacing, right? That's where humans come in really handy. And that's why you don't really want to throw them like a World War I or Napoleonic War, throw them on the battlefield, get them shot, whatever, because then you can't really human interface. So, for example, in Ukraine, etc., if you could take the territory with automatons, so you battle over Kherson, you don't lose any lives, the automatons take the town, and then you move in on either side, your humans with guns and stuff, and now they control the population, become essentially a mobile military police force. That is a better use of your military resources and your human resources and your human capital. Just throwing them up on the front line is not an effective strategy. But in terms of human integration, I mean, super soldiers have been something that's been in the minds of people forever. And you can look at this in artwork, Renaissance artwork or whatever. We've always wanted to be stronger, bigger, better, more capable, more fit than we are just on the biological level. And then in the modern world, you know, we want to enhance our components in order to outcompete, right? So yeah, you're right. There is a form of transhumanism forming up in the military sphere, in the military sector, from the military industrial complex. But the point is that usually, just like most of it, it sits around in the mind of communities like this, but then it usually defaults to rot. It goes into the back books, it rots, and it disappears. What actually has to happen is more of a civilian embracing of these technologies and these ideas. So athletes, prosthetics, civilian enhancements for, you know, your eyes, your retinal display, you have to be able to try and take the technologies, these force techs, because the military doesn't just share its tech around very easily. And you can argue, well, what about ARPANET? What about DARPA? What about the internet? Yeah, that's a really good point. But there's just spillover effects of super powerful techs. Doesn't happen a lot compared to the amount of innovation. So what you really need to do is you really need to engage the civilian population and say, look what the military designed here. Look at these clothes. Look at these arms. Look at these stimulants. Look at these nutraceuticals. Look at the stuff they've built. We can, as commercial entities, you could sell this stuff. As humans, as civilians, you could eat this stuff. You could ingest this stuff. You could actually enhance yourself, blah, blah, blah. What you have to do is you have to take what the military is doing, and you have to take it and you have to sell it to the population. And when you sell it to a population, you get the idea out there, and then they will innovate on top of that, just like they do with the internet, just like they've done with all the other techs that have come out of the military industrial complex. Otherwise, it rots. And I'll tell you what, if we were talking in the early 2000s, if we were talking in the 1970s, if we were talking in the 1940s right now, if we were talking at the turn of the last century, I could say the same thing over and over and over, because there's so much innovation, forced innovation, which just sits there. It goes into a library and it rots, or it just rots. It's not even that they hide it a lot of the time. It's just rotting. It's literally rotting. So we have to go into these places, into these spaces. We have to take out the best of it, and you have to sell it. And the people who do, the Bill Gates, the Elon Musks, the Peter Thiels, the people who actually do this end up making all the money, right? That's what they do. That's how these guys end up with all the money. They just take that publicly funded stuff, and then they just turn around and sell it to civilian populations, and everybody gets upset when they get discovered, but everyone keeps on doing it because that's the smart thing to do.
Interesting. Well, thank you, Steele, for those thoughts. Unfortunately, our time today is coming to an end. We have about a minute and a half remaining, and I would like to highlight some of our viewer comments on these subjects. So Dowd Sheikh writes, a lot of religions believe that the world will end in a war. Hopefully, these beliefs do not become self-prophesizing. And indeed, one of our major concerns with the U.S. Transhumanist Party is how to minimize existential risk. And I have stated this year, 2022, is the year of the Great Filter. We have less than a month remaining, so I hope we can pass through the Great Filter this year. Walter Crompton writes, transhumanism is essentially apolitical, but the USTP aims to ensure its humanity. Perhaps that is a better description of our goal, ensuring the humanity of transhuman advances. I quite like that characterization. Thank you, Walter. And also, Alexandria Black wonders if Steele is familiar with the thinking of John Mearsheimer, great realist, foreign policy scholar. I have listened to several hours of his lectures, and I would recommend that people check him out. And finally, I wanted to say to Steele, thank you very much for joining us today. We are pleased that you have come back, at least for our virtual Enlightenment Salon, and we hope that you will be able to set up a new show, a new format to highlight the conversations that are happening within the transhumanist community and help elevate the public visibility of our community, as well as the degree to which we can attract additional supporters, additional viewers, additional demographics to our movement. Thank you very much to Steele. Thank you very much to Alan and Ben for inaugurating our salon today. And thank you to all of our panelists and our viewers for another great conversation. Until next time, I hope you all live long and prosper.